Thanks for the time, everybody. Good morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. As Nidhi said, I am with Samba Nova Systems. We, enabled by our full stack platform, we work with enterprises to build their own secured, customized private GPT. So, for leaders like yourself, you are probably leaders like yourself that understand the connection between technology and business growth. This is probably a really exciting time. I know for me, it's an incredibly exciting time. We've just passed the 1-year anniversary of ChatGPT. It feels like it's been much longer than a year. But as Dr. Ken said, AI has a long history, from the Google searches we do to the ways that banks manage risk. And now we are in the beginning of a tipping point where AI will be deployed everywhere across the organization. And the only comparison I can make, and I'll be giving away my age a little bit, but the only comparison I can make is that in the mid-90s, when someone showed me Mosaic, the Mosaic browser for the first time, I had no understanding or no concept of how integrated the internet would be into everything we do 25 years later. And the same thing will happen much more quickly with AI, where AI will become pervasive across the enterprise. And companies that think strategically about AI for their enterprise will understand that rather than using one large monolithic model like GPT-4 for everything in the organization, you will need a composition of finely tuned expert models. Just like you hire experts in different areas of your business, you will have to have expert models across your AI strategy. Also touching on the open source comment, I truly believe that open source is the future. And the reason for that is there's a few reasons. One is the advances in open source are accelerating very quickly. So if you're following anyone on LinkedIn that talks about AI or does research in AI, you will see that every week, even multiple times a week, new developments are happening in open source that are really moving us forward quickly. And then the other reason open source is so critical is because of the transparency and the explainability of the models. And I'll touch on why that's important in a minute. Lastly, for enterprise grade AI, the need to tune your models with your own private data, your customer data, your product data, your financial data, data that you do not want shared with any public model, any model that is being owned or shared with other organizations. So those three key components are really what is going to drive companies forward with enterprise AI. So as business leaders that are leading your organizations through this AI journey, there's a critical question that you have to answer, thinking now long term, which is AI a tool for your organization, or is AI an asset? And what I mean by that is a tool. I think we can all think of a tool as something where when you buy it, everybody gets the same thing, right? Excel is a tool. Salesforce.com is a tool. If I pay the same amount of money as my competitor, I'm going to get the same product. An asset is something that understands particularly about your business. It understands the strategy of your business. It understands your customers. It understands the nuances and the decision-making processes of your business and why your business is differentiated. And so for organizations, thinking about AI as an asset lets you think about how to accrete value over time with your AI models and they start to become core IP for your business. And so you can imagine, as you build value in your models over time, you don't want to share that value with your competitors who are also using the same models. You don't want to kind of uncover the secret sauce that you've developed, and you want to ensure that you retain ownership of those assets over time, and you're not locked into a particular vendor or a particular technology. Thinking about AI as an asset really gives enterprises the opportunity to focus on accuracy, greater levels of accuracy, being able to ensure that your models are making decisions, generating content, driving processes in a way that is specialized for your business and for those particular processes. Again, retaining ownership of that AI, retaining ownership of those models that have been adapted with private data. It ensures your ability to control the data that you're using, how the models are built, how the results are delivered, where the data goes, how the models are updated, gives you much more control over how those models drive your business. And then lastly, regulations and compliance. And this touches on both ownership of the models, but also the open source question. So open source models provide much more transparency and full auditability. Open source models allow you as a business to uncover and understand the decision-making processes of your model and the way they've been trained. And I'm not sure how many of you have been following what's happening in the EU, but the EU has recently come out with some regulations around AI, and every AI technology, every process within an organization that will be enabled or transformed by AI will need to be able to have that auditability and explain how that decision-making process works. So part of the problem with closed proprietary models is you don't have the opportunity to understand how that training happened, how that decision-making process works, and what the kind of what the weights are for that model. So, I talked a little bit about the pervasiveness of AI, and if you think about where we're going, what as business leaders, you're thinking about how AI will affect your business, different processes. Frankly, AI will impact every function of your organization in the very near future. AI will either enable, transform, or redefine the processes in your business. And so thinking about a long-term strategy for AI in your business is critical. But when you think about the different processes that you will want to impact with AI, that you'll need to think about how they are impacted with AI, they're very different processes. And I touched on the analogy of your hiring strategy, right? You're not going to hire somebody who's a generalist, who can answer customer questions as well as do your financial reporting. And the way we've been thinking about tools like ChatGPT or OpenAI, that is much more of a generalist approach to AI. It is a model that's been trained with huge amounts of public sourced information, right? Everything from every technology for the past, 50 years to every episode of the Kardashians for the past 7 years. Everything is part of that model. And so when you think about your business as opposed to kind of consumer use of AI, your business needs a much more specialized approach. And what we call this is a composition of experts. You need a composition of models that are trained in different activities, different functions, different expertise to be able to optimize within each of those processes, rather sub-optimize across all of them. So if you think about a process like customer support, you're going to need a different type of expertise on how to talk to customers than you would on how to manage your supply chain and work with your vendors. And so these would be different sets of experts. And then even within those different functions, you may have different models. So going back to the customer support process, the model or the expert who understands how to answer customer questions is going to be different than the expert who understands how to analyze customer sentiment or who understands how to classify calls. So even within those functions. And so you can think of the strategy that you build out for your enterprise as one where you have this enterprise foundation, but supporting hundreds, potentially, of models that work in conjunction with each other to optimize the processes across your business. So I'm sorry, did someone have a question, or was that that was just okay. So I think the way to think about this is every function in your business is going to have an AI assistant or an AI co-pilot that will be supporting or transforming that function. So working with our customers, we talk about their journey and how to get started, how to think about investing strategically in AI. And the things that we focus on and that we ask our customers to think about is first start out with the best open source models. Again, these are rapidly advancing. They are being, the opportunity is to provide transparency in how they are making decisions, how they are being trained. Then fine-tune these for the enterprise so that your enterprise is being supported by models that have expertise and can provide relevant and accurate decision-making for all of the different processes across your business. Third, optimize on the highest performance hardware. Being able to optimize the models to the hardware is critical, especially as compute for AI is increasingly expensive. So being able to optimize and think more about how the models and the hardware work together is critical. And then deploying using your own private data in a private and secured environment, protecting that sensitive data and training on your data in order to build long-term differentiation. So that was a little quicker than I expected, but hopefully there'll be some questions, and I'm happy to dive back in and kind of review some of the stuff that I talked about.
So, Melyssa, I had a question. You talked about how AI will impact all functions in one of the slides. From your experience, where have you seen the most progress so far? Which functions have had most amount of deployability when it comes to AI use cases? And And I think for our audience, since like this is an industrial sector heavy crowd, if you could also speak a little bit to that, that will be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So most organizations are still in the very early stages of deploying AI within their business. So most companies are still in the experimentation phase. And what we see as being the lowest hanging fruit or the biggest immediate bang for the buck ROI is think about where the most unstructured data lives in your organization. So most organizations have a huge amount of unstructured data, whether it's product documentation or customer documentation, customer feedback, customer calls, legal documentation, anything that involves unstructured data and making sense of that, that is really where the most immediate value comes. So I'll give you an example of a company that they have a website that they're an industrial manufacturing company, global, and they have huge amounts. They're I think probably over 30 or 40 years old. They have huge amounts of product documentation for customized products, for standardized products. So much they've lost track of, and it's on their website for their customers to access. But having customers access that is really inefficient. Customers don't always get what they're looking for. It's hard to find things. So what they've done is they've leveraged AI, generative AI, to allow customers to search with semantic search, just ask questions about the types of things that they're looking for, what the context of that question is. And it allows the customer to very quickly find what they're looking for in a much more relevant way than just general keyword search. So that's kind of the first use case we often talk to customers about is where is your unstructured data and where can you tap into that to drive immediate value. The other example might be customer calls or customer emails. So there's a lot that you can uncover and mine within those communications related to service levels, related to market opportunities, related to demand changes. And so being able to tap into that in a way that drives insight and helps you make decisions in a much more informed way is also something that provides immediate value. The other area where we are seeing significant growth and opportunity is code generation. So a lot of industrial manufacturing, industrial sector companies are using coding now for a lot of product areas. And being able to use generative AI for code generation is significant. It's been shown to be incredibly accurate. It's been shown to cut time, drive efficiency in a much more meaningful way, and using it not only for code generation, but for identifying where there are problem areas in the code, identifying opportunities to make improvements.
Got it. Thank you, Melyssa.
Hey Melissa, it's Connor again from the INA side. I thought the illustration you had of the kind of different functional layers and each like represents a different expert was a helpful way to think about it. And one thing it made me think about is how I think in a lot of organizations you've kind of got this concept of a matrixed organization where those functional layers will kind of serve across business units, product lines, like what have you. So is there room for like thinking about like how do you think about like AI serving in like a matrix way like that, or is that where you introduce or the human in the loop concept becomes more important in terms of how to like tailor these to specific business contexts?
Yeah, I mean, human in the loop is always an important aspect, but when I think about a matrixed organization, you can think about each functional area within like a business unit, for example, has commonalities. And so you could train a model on all of those commonalities and use that base model and then train those models specific to that business unit. So, you know, you may have an area of, I don't know, finance that's focused on the software business unit. And their requirements for finance are different than finance for, let's say, the services business unit. But there's some core capabilities or core expertise about finance in general in that business that can be leveraged across both. So again, with this idea of composition of experts, you can train a single model and then, for lack of a better term, clone it and fine tune each of those based on the specialty or the particularities of that business unit.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Does
That's
that make
helpful.
sense?
Thank you. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Melyssa, one more follow-up question to what you talked about, that you've seen most value so far where there is most amount of unstructured data. But is that how you've been seeing enterprises like approach the problem, like approach it, or how do they like frame the problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've seen two different types of buyers out of the enterprise. The first is the buyer that approaches it from a use case specific standpoint. So they'll come to the problem and say, we want to be able to do X with AI. Like, we want to be able to generate code with AI, or we want to be able to support our contact centers with AI. And so thinking about it from a specific use case perspective, and then over time, building out a roadmap for how to expand. Once that has been proven out in that use case, expand that to different use cases across the organization. The other way we've seen companies approach this, maybe that are a little bit more mature in terms of their AI journey, is companies that are thinking about, I need to build a enterprise strategy. I know that there's a bunch of use cases I can tackle. That's not the priority. The priority is, how do we approach this to build out an enterprise foundation that we can then allow different groups within the organization to access to build out their use cases specifically. So it's more about approaching it from more of an application use case perspective versus approaching it from a platform perspective. And again, that typically has to do with companies that are still in the experimentation or validation stage versus companies that have proven it out, understand what they need to do, and have budgeted for something that is more strategic.